In old age, if there's no one left by your side, here's what to do. Hello everyone and welcome to The Elderly Mind. Today I'd like to invite you to hear a heartfelt story about learning to live fully, even while facing loss and loneliness in later life. This is the story of Michael Anderson, a 62-year-old man who found himself confronting the trials of aging on his own. From retirement and the passing of his wife to his struggles with feeling isolated from his adult children, his journey reveals just how much resilience and emotional depth someone can discover when they choose to embrace each moment they still have. My name is Michael Anderson, and this year I turned 62. Before I retired, I worked at a public service agency here in the United States for nearly half my life. When our department underwent restructuring, I was asked to take an early retirement. Fortunately, I'd always lived modestly, so I had some savings to rely on. My financial situation wasn't dire, but I certainly didn't feel wealthy. Still, for a while, I thought my life was perfectly fine. Years ago, our home had been filled with warmth. My wife, Mary, my son, David, and my daughter, Sophia. But as the years passed, our household shrank. My children both married and moved away. David lives about 2 hours north with his wife, and Sophia lives in another state with her husband. Several years back, my wife passed away after a long illness. In what felt like the blink of an eye, I was left alone in a house that once overflowed with activity. One evening, I was sitting by myself on the living room sofa. The quiet of the house seemed to seep into my bones, and a sudden wave of loneliness hit me. That was when my phone rang. It was David. He sounded rushed, like he'd been meaning to call for days, but only just got the chance. "Hey, Dad, are you home alone tonight? I wanted to drop by with Kate, but something came up at work, so I don't think we can make it." I felt a pang of disappointment, but tried to understand. After all, David has a busy life, a career to manage and responsibilities to his own family. I didn't want to burden him, so I said, "It's fine, son. Don't worry about me. I'm doing okay on my own." Yet when the call ended, I let out a long sigh. I couldn't help but feel as though the world were moving on without me. Once upon a time, I had a job to go to every morning and a family that needed looking after. Now, in early retirement, I was alone with my thoughts. My wife was gone and my kids were scattered, building their own futures. The emptiness kept growing until it was almost tangible. The next day, I got a visit from my neighbor, Mr. Johnson. He's close to my age, a friendly fellow who's always been good company. We were chatting when he asked, "Michael, you've got nobody else living here with you, right?" I just nodded and stayed quiet. He sighed. "I'm in the same boat. My wife passed and my children have their own busy schedules. I know what it's like to feel this loneliness creeping in." Hearing him say that was like having a bruise pressed. It hurt more than I cared to admit, but it also felt strangely validating. We weren't alone in our solitude. Countless older adults were facing the same heartbreak. Then he looked me in the eye and said something that stuck with me for days. "We've reached an age where we have to think ahead. If the day comes when it's really just you, alone in this big house, what will you do?" Those words dug into my mind like tiny thorns. I began to imagine scenarios where I might truly be alone, with no one to talk to, no one to care for me. If I fell ill, how would I manage? This question echoed in my head for days and nights. Soon after, my daughter Sophia paid me a short visit, bringing along my little granddaughter, hoping for a nice long chat. I even cooked a few of Sophia's childhood favorites. But the moment she stepped through the door, he said, "Dad, I only have a bit of time. I still have to go pick up Ryan later. Work's been crazy." I could see the worry lines on her face. She was stressed, trying to juggle her job and her family responsibilities. Of course, I wanted more than just 15 rushed minutes, but all I could say was, "That's fine, honey. I'm doing all right." She ate a few quick bites of my cooking, gathered her daughter, and left, reminding me to take care. Standing by the window, I watched them disappear down the street, feeling hollow. That night, I lay awake in bed. My mind wandered back to Mr. Johnson's words, the idea of living on my own for the rest of my life. I thought, I can't just drift like this. I need a plan. A few days later, I suggested that Mr. Johnson and I take a stroll in the local park. We sat on a bench watching people pass by. I turned to him and said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day. If we really end up alone in our old age, how do we manage?" He nodded. "I've been thinking too. There are a few things we'd better prepare. First off, finances. We need to make sure we have enough savings to cover our own needs, bills, groceries, medical expenses, so we're not caught off guard. I completely agreed. Money can't buy happiness, but if you haven't secured the basics, being old and alone can become unbearably difficult. So I spent a few days going through my finances, estimating what I might need in the coming years, including possible medical bills. I realized that thorough planning was crucial. Mr. Johnson continued, "Also, we can't rely on our kids forever. They have their own lives, and sometimes they live too far away to help us at a moment's notice. We have to stay as active as possible, exercise, sign up for group activities, avoid isolating ourselves at home." It occurred to me then that I'd essentially walled myself off after retirement. I watched TV, stared at the empty walls, and rarely participated in anything beyond my front door. Loneliness was creeping in both physically and mentally. Realizing this, I decided to change. Every morning I started going to the park to jog, or at least do some gentle stretches. In the evenings, I visited the community center to play chess or board games with fellow retirees. Gradually, I made new friends, and my life began to expand. Still, there were nights when the silence closed in on me, especially as I lay in bed gazing up at the ceiling. I couldn't help wondering, what would happen if I fell seriously ill? Who would look after me? Those thoughts kept me tossing and turning until one day a new idea came to mind, finding a companion in my later years. The thought itself made me feel conflicted. My wife had only passed away a few years ago. I worried I might be betraying her memory, but as time wore on, the ache of loneliness grew more intense. Eventually, I opened up to Mr. Johnson about it. He listened intently and said, "Michael, there's no shame in wanting companionship at our age. It's not about finding someone to serve you or do chores. It's about having someone to share stories with, to keep the loneliness at bay." His words alleviated my guilt. Wanting a partner wasn't about disrespecting my late wife's memory. It was simply about continuing to live and love. During one of my evening activities at the community center, I met Susan Miller, a warm, friendly woman around my age. Like me, she lived alone because her children had moved to different states for work. She was lively, loved going on day trips, and seemed to savor life. We hit it off, exchanging phone numbers and soon chatting regularly. Before long, we found ourselves grocery shopping together, trying out new recipes and taking morning walks. Her presence filled my house with a brightness I thought I'd lost forever. As time passed, Susan moved in with me. We didn't feel the need to make it official through marriage. Day-to-day life was more or less as it would be for any affectionate couple. Our evenings were spent talking, watching the news, or just discussing the trivial details of the day. One day I came down with a nasty fever. Susan sprang into action, making sure I took the right medications, gently wiping my forehead with a cool cloth, even phoning my son David to ask him to help take me to a doctor. When David arrived, he was startled by how devoted Susan was, but he quickly adjusted. "Dad," he said, "why didn't you call me sooner? If you're sick, you should let me know." I managed a tired laugh. "Son, I didn't want to trouble you, and Susan's been a wonderful help." David nodded, and I could sense his appreciation. At the hospital, the doctor reassured me that I only needed rest. David insisted I come stay with him until I recovered, but I declined. I felt more comfortable at home, and Susan knew my routine better than anyone. This tiny episode underscored how precious it was to have someone by my side, someone who cared about how I was doing day in and day out. Our quiet, steadfast companionship blossomed. Yes, it was different from the passionate romance of young couples, but it felt steady, a gentle presence that warded off the shadows of loneliness. I felt like I'd finally found some peace in my later years. But life never goes exactly as planned. One afternoon, Susan's son, who lived a couple of states away, called to say he was getting married and dearly hoped Susan would move in with him to help settle things before the wedding. Susan's eyes shone with worry. She knew I depended on her companionship, yet she also felt she should be present for her child's major life event. Trying to be strong, I said, "Susan, this is wonderful news. He's your son, and family is important. You should go." She paused, tears shining in her eyes. "I'm so used to this place now, and I'm not sure I'll be much help there, but maybe I should be with my children." I forced a sad smile. "They need you, Susan. That's a mother's duty, and I'll be all right," I lied. Of course I wasn't all right. When she finally left a few days later, I drove her to the bus station. Standing there, I watched her step up into the bus, my heart feeling like a stone had lodged itself inside. When the bus pulled away, I just stood rooted to the spot. Once again, I faced a house that felt too big, too silent. I tried to revert to my old routines, chatting with neighbors, visiting the community center, and occasionally calling my kids. But the warmth Susan had brought was gone, replaced by a heavier loneliness than before. My son David and daughter Sophia phoned me regularly, noticing that I sounded down. Yet they lived too far to be at my side consistently, and I couldn't expect them to drop their own obligations just to take care of me. A few months later, I heard some people at the community center talking about assisted living facilities, places designed for older adults with medical staff, group activities, and peers. The thought popped into my head. Maybe I should research that option. One phone call later, David sounded concerned. "Dad, do you really want to move into a senior living place? Won't it be depressing?" I took a deep breath. "Son, it's not about it being depressing or not. I just need a place that's stable, where I don't have to worry about being on my own if something happens. You and Sophia can't always be here. At least if I'm in a place with on-site care and friends my age, I won't have to wait alone if I'm sick or need help." After some hesitation, David said he'd talk to Sophia. A few days later, the two of them came over and sat down with me. Sophia looked worried. "Dad, we understand living alone is tough, but are you sure a senior community is right for you?" I gently explained, "I've thought about it for a while. I need a place where I can be around others in similar situations. I appreciate how much you both want to help, but I can't rely on you all the time. You have jobs, children, and your own lives." They looked at each other, then nodded. David said, "We support you, Dad. We'll visit often." Okay. Shortly thereafter, I moved to a peaceful assisted living home in the suburbs. It had a garden, recreation rooms, and a group of friendly seniors who became my neighbors. A resident named Mr. Vernon took me under his wing on my very first day, giving me a quick tour and introducing me to a few folks who liked chess just as much as I did. That first night, lying in my new bed, I stared out the window at the moonlit sky and felt a sense of relief. Yes, this place was unfamiliar, but at least I wasn't entirely alone. There were people around, staff members watching out for us, and new friends willing to chat or share a cup of coffee. Over the next 6 months, I adapted. I had routine meals in the dining hall, joined a Tai Chi group in the mornings, and started playing board games again with a few friends every afternoon. David and Sophia would drop by sometimes, bringing their kids. I always tried to reassure them I was settling in well, and in truth, I began to feel a certain measure of contentment. Then one afternoon, while I was basking in the warm sunshine in the courtyard, my phone rang. It was David, his voice tight with worry. "Dad, Susan's been in a car accident. She's in the ICU and it's not looking good." My heart pounded, the phone slipping almost out of my hand. "Are you sure? Where is she now?" He told me which hospital and asked if I wanted him to pick me up. The drive to the hospital was a blur. I kept recalling the day Susan left, how I had tried to be brave, how we had promised to stay in touch. I never imagined it would end up like this. When we arrived, David and Sophia were already in the waiting area, looking worried. David came over. "Dad, the doctors are still in there working on her. It doesn't look promising." I stared at the red emergency light above the doors to the operating room, my heart pounding in my ears. I prayed silently, clinging to the hope that Susan's strong spirit would pull her through. The minutes dragged on like hours until a tired-looking doctor finally emerged. We rushed up to him and I stammered, "How is she?" He shook his head, explaining that the injuries were severe and Susan's age made surgery and recovery more complicated. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "You should prepare for the worst." I felt my knees buckle. David helped me into a chair, my mind blank with disbelief. The door swung open again and a gurney rolled out. Susan lying motionless with an oxygen mask, pale as a sheet. My eyes filled with tears as I hurried to her side. Susan, it's me, Michael. Can you hear me?" She opened her eyes slightly. Her breathing was shallow, and she seemed unable to speak. I grasped her hand. It felt cold, fragile. "Hang in there, okay? Remember, we were going to spend our golden years together. You can't leave me, Susan." A single tear slid down her cheek, and her lips moved, though no sound came out. yet I could tell she recognized me. In that moment, the lump in my throat was too big to swallow. I pleaded silently for her to stay. Even David and Sophia stood by, tears in their eyes, though they knew words were of no use. Late that night, Susan's condition took a turn for the worse. The doctor told us that she was slipping away. I couldn't bring myself to leave her bedside, afraid that the moment I closed my eyes, she'd be gone. But Susan seemed to sense me there. Her eyelids fluttered once more, and she managed to raise her hand just enough to place it in mine. I squeezed it, feeling my tears land on her wrist. She formed a single sentence in a voice so faint I almost imagined it. "Michael, live well." Then her hand went limp, and her eyes closed for the last time. I cried out, begging her to come back, but all I heard was the sound of the monitors going flat. That crushing heartbreak felt like the world had collapsed around me. In my 62 years, I'd lost dear ones before, but this was different. Perhaps because Susan was my last line of defense against loneliness. Now she was gone. The days and weeks after that blurred together. I returned to the assisted living home, but everything seemed bleak. My new friends tried to console me. David and Sophia visited more frequently, even bringing the grandkids, hoping to cheer me up. I appreciated their kindness, but the numbness inside me just wouldn't lift. Late at night, I'd lie awake remembering Susan's voice, her smile, the way she moved about the house. I'd recall how she had gently wiped my forehead when I was sick. Now all of that was just a memory. One morning I saw a new resident at the facility, an older gentleman who looked anxious, lost, and sad. He reminded me of myself when I first arrived. So I patted him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, care to take a walk around the courtyard with me?" He nodded silently, as though grateful for even that small gesture of fellowship. We walked without speaking, yet we shared a mutual understanding. Aging can be lonely, losing people you love can be devastating. But sometimes a gentle presence, a friend, makes life a little easier to bear. That evening, as I returned to my room and lay down, Susan's image filled my mind again. But I noticed something had changed in me. The pain was still there, but in its place also lay a tender gratitude for the time we had. She might be gone, but her warmth and compassion lived on in my heart. As the days passed, I found a renewed resolve to live well in her honor. Taking a deep breath, I stepped outside one morning, letting the early sunlight warm my face. I remembered the words she spoke, how we should value each relationship, treasure each day, and accept that life is impermanent. People pass away, but their impact remains, shaping how we face our futures. In truth, I've learned that old age is not just about loss, it's also about realization. The realization that every relationship in life, from family bonds to friendships and late-in-life companions, must be cherished while we still have them. The clock runs quickly in our later years, but that doesn't mean we can't find ways to fulfill our time with purpose and appreciation. Famed writer Haruki Murakami once wrote about how we don't age gradually, but rather in sudden bursts. You wake up and a year has flown by. You turn around and your youth has vanished. People start calling you sir or ma'am, and suddenly you realize you can no longer cling to the illusion of being young. Your parents grow frail or pass away, and you see yourself in the mirror trying to accept that you too are getting old. At this point, you start to choose your words carefully. You speak less, not because you have nothing to say, but because you realize how few people truly listen or understand. You encounter setbacks you never imagined, health issues, financial worries, children too busy to visit. You discover that no matter how big your social circle once was, genuine understanding and compassion can be rare. And yet, in the quiet hush of night, when you're alone with your thoughts, you might feel strangely at peace if you've come to accept yourself. You know at last that your worth does not depend on the approval of others. You learn that humility, not pride, is the path to peace in old age. Your perspective on love changes too. In your younger days, you might have believed in a grand, unbreakable passion. But as the years stretch on, some relationships fade. You learn that not every love story is meant to last forever. People change. You change. The important thing is that you continue to treasure the memories that shaped you. Life's disappointments accumulate, but so do moments of unexpected grace. You stop placing unrealistic expectations on people, and in doing so, you're freed from being constantly let down. Some might call it cynicism, but perhaps it's simply wisdom, an awareness that peace comes from balancing hope with realism. Above all, you learn that in the end, the person who will always be there for you is you. If you can stand on your own 2 feet, if you can push through heartache and let yourself heal, then you've already found a kind of strength that no one can take away. With that in mind, I want to leave you with a final thought. If you ever find yourself aging alone, remember there are ways to prepare. Don't hesitate to build a solid financial plan and maintain your independence as best you can. Nourish your soul with friendships, hobbies, and, if you're open to it, a new companion who might bring unexpected light into your life, even if it's for just a few short years. Treasure the people who truly care, but don't be afraid to place yourself in an environment where help is available. If that's an assisted living community, so be it. If it's staying with your children or close friends, that's fine too. There's no one right way to age. There's only the way that gives you the most comfort, dignity, and companionship in your final decades. And when the night falls and you feel that familiar ache of missing those who have gone before, remind yourself that you carry them in your heart. The time you shared was real and precious. No one can take that away from you. Thank you for watching and supporting Candle of Wisdom. If you found Michael Anderson's story meaningful, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our new uploads. Take care, cherish your loved ones, and we'll see you in the next video.